The air conditioning in the Coronado War Room hummed with a mechanical desperation, struggling and failing to battle the aggressive Southern California heat that baked the concrete bunker from the outside. Inside, the air tasted of ozone, stale coffee, and the sharp, metallic tang of high-stakes stress. Underneath the main tactical table, amidst a tangled nest of fiber optic cables and power lines that looked like black snakes coiling in the dust, Lennox Hale knelt on the floor. She was not supposed to be the focal point of this room. She was logistics support, invisible, a ghost in the machine of war. But even in the gloom beneath the table, even with grease smudged on her left cheekbone, she possessed a visual gravity that defied her lowly station. A stray curl of golden blonde hair had escaped her messy, regulation bun, falling across eyes that held the chilling, impossible blue intensity of a winter ocean. Her skin was porcelain fair, a stark, almost blinding contrast to the gray anti-static mats and the scuffed combat boots of the operators pacing above her. A constellation of natural freckles dusted her nose and cheeks, giving her the appearance of a princess who had taken a wrong turn on the way to a coronation and ended up in a submarine bunker. Above her, the heavy thud of boots stopped. Silence rippled outward from that position, silencing the low murmur of tactical chatter. "Careful down there, Anastasia," a voice sneered, dripping with the kind of arrogance that only comes from being the golden boy of a SEAL team for too long. "Don't break a nail. Those cables cost more than your annual salary." Lieutenant Commander Brooks Halden stood over her, arms crossed, his biceps straining against the fabric of his uniform. He looked like the recruiting poster, square jaw, tan skin, eyes that had seen combat and liked it. But right now, those eyes were fixed on Lennox with predatory amusement. He did not see a technician. He saw a distraction. He saw a porcelain doll playing dress-up in a world of wolves. Lennox froze. Her slender, pale fingers hovered over the server port she was rerouting. She did not flinch. She did not scramble to apologize or scurry away like the mouse he wanted her to be. She simply tilted her head, the harsh overhead fluorescent light catching the sharp, aristocratic angle of her cheekbone. She blew the stray curl of hair out of her eyes with a sharp, annoyed puff of breath. A gesture of dismissal so regal it belonged in a throne room, not a server farm. Then, unseen by Halden, unseen by the 6 other operators snickering in the background, her left index finger tapped the concrete floor. Tap, tap. It was not a nervous tick. It was a confirmation signal. 2 taps. The authorization code for Operation Black Neptune to enter its terminal phase. Halden thought he was mocking a servant. He did not realize he was standing over his executioner. "Cat got your tongue, sweetheart?" Halden pressed, leaning down, invading her personal space. "Or do you just not speak unless spoken to by a superior officer?" Lennox slowly rose to her feet. She moved with a fluid grace that belied the heavy equipment belt at her waist. She dusted off her knees, her face an unreadable mask of calm. She met his gaze, and for a fraction of a second, Halden felt a chill crawl up his spine, a primal warning his conscious mind was too arrogant to acknowledge. "The connection is stable, Lieutenant Commander," she said, her voice flat, devoid of fear. "You will not have lag on the satellite feed." "I didn't ask about the feed," Halden stepped closer, dropping his voice to a menacing whisper. "I asked if you knew your place." Before Lennox could respond, a sudden shrill alarm cut through the tension. The main tactical wall, a massive array of screens displaying real-time satellite telemetry from the Pacific Theater, spasmed. Static washed over the maps. The drone feeds went black. The room erupted into chaos. "We lost the uplink," a junior operator shouted, fingers flying across a keyboard. "The system is non-responsive. We are blind in Sector 4. Halden spun around, his face flushing red. "Fix it. We have a live op in 20 minutes. Get it back online." "I can't bypass the firewall, sir." "It is a hard lock." Halden shoved the junior operator aside and hammered the keys himself, his movements angry and jagged. "Come on, you piece of junk." Nothing happened. The screen remained a wall of static. The tension in the room spiked to a fever pitch. A blind team was a dead team. Lennox watched them for a heartbeat. A heartbeat. Then she moved. She did not run. She glided. She stepped up to the console, slipping past Halden's bulk with the elegance of a dancer. "Move," she said. It wasn't a request. Halden was so stunned by the command, he stepped back reflexively. Lennox didn't look at the keyboard. Her eyes were locked on the static. Her fingers, those pale, slender fingers Halden had mocked, danced across the keys. She didn't type a standard reset command. She hit 3 specific keys in a sequence that defied standard operating procedure, executing a backdoor override in under 2 seconds. Click, click, enter. The static vanished. The map snapped back into razor-sharp focus. The drone feeds populated instantly, showing the thermal signatures of the target compound in high definition. The room went silent. Lennox stepped back, smoothing the front of her uniform. She didn't wait for praise. She turned to gather her tools. "Just luck," Halden muttered, his ego bruising purple. Loose connection reset itself. Lennox paused at the door, her back to him. She didn't turn around. She just walked out into the corridor, disappearing into the shadows of the base. Lennox hides well, but where are you watching from? Outside the war room, the corridor was cooler, but the air felt heavier. Lennox walked with a steady, measured pace. She kept her head down, playing the role, but her eyes scanned every security camera, every badge reader, every face that passed her. She wasn't just walking, she was mapping. She turned a corner and nearly collided with Chief Petty Officer Waller, the oldest operator on Halden's team. Waller was 43, with a face like worn leather and eyes that missed nothing. He stopped, looking at her, really looking at her, in a way the others didn't. "That wasn't luck back there," Waller said, his voice gravelly. Lennox shifted her toolkit, feigning nervousness. "I just hit the reset, Chief, like rebooting a router." Waller narrowed his eyes. "You typed a command line override. I saw your hands. Admin clerks don't know kernel-level syntax." "I play a lot of video games," Lennox lied, the falsehood sliding off her tongue smooth as silk. Waller didn't look convinced, but he didn't press. He just nodded slowly. "Watch yourself around Halden. He doesn't like being shown up. Especially not by—" He gestured vaguely at her appearance. "By a princess?" Lennox supplied the word, her tone dry. "By someone who doesn't look like they belong in the mud," Waller corrected. "Keep your head down, kid." He walked past her. Lennox waited until he was gone before she let out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. 4 counts in, 4 counts hold, 4 counts out, 4 counts empty. The breathing technique of a sniper, or a deep cover operative trying to keep her heart rate from tripping a biometric sensor. She made her way to the logistics office, a cramped room filled with requisition forms and spare parts. It was her cage and her sanctuary. She sat at her desk, pulling up a standard inventory screen. But as her fingers tapped the keys, the screen shifted. The inventory list dissolved, replaced by a secure, encrypted communication channel. Subject, Black Neptune. Status, active. Target, Brooks Halden. Current location, War Room. Objective, confirm Ghost Fund transaction. Lennox's eyes narrowed. Halden wasn't just an arrogant bully. He was a traitor, but he was a traitor with a hero's reputation. To bring him down, she needed more than an attitude problem. She needed the money trail. Her earpiece crackled, a tiny microscopic receiver deep in her ear canal. "Target is moving," a handler's voice whispered. "Heading to the mess hall. He is agitated." Lennox closed the laptop. Time to play the victim again. The mess hall was crowded, a cacophony of clattering trays and loud voices. Lennox moved through the lines, grabbing a bottle of water and a salad. She spotted Halden at a center table, holding court with his squad. He was laughing, loud and boisterous, performing for his audience. Lennox charted a course that would take her past his table, but at a safe distance. She kept her eyes on the floor. But Halden saw her. She saw his eyes flick toward her, then to his coffee cup. A malicious grin spread across his face. As she passed, Halden stood up abruptly, turning as if to greet someone behind him. His arm swung out, accidentally, striking his full cup of black coffee. The dark liquid arched through the air and splashed across the front of Lennox's pristine gray uniform. The mess hall went quiet. The hot liquid soaked into the fabric, staining it dark brown, dripping onto her boots. It burned her skin, but Lennox didn't jump. She didn't scream, she didn't cry. "Holy cow, Anastasia," Halden exclaimed, his voice dripping with fake concern. "I am so sorry. I didn't see you there. You're so quiet." His team snickered. "Maybe she melted," one of them whispered. Lennox stood perfectly still. The coffee was hot, blistering against her skin. Most people would be frantic to get it off. But Lennox treated the pain as information. Heat, location, severity, ignore. She reached into her pocket and pulled out a plain white handkerchief. With the slow, deliberate movements, she began to dab at the stain. Her face was a mask of terrifying calm. She looked up, locking eyes with Halden. The laughter at the table died down. There was something in her eyes, not the teary humiliation Halden wanted, but a cold, flat assessment. It was the look of a scientist observing a particularly interesting and particularly doomed lab rat. "Accidents happen, Lieutenant Commander," she said softly. "Stains wash out. Some things do not." She turned and walked away, her back straight, her dignity untouched by the mess. Halden watched her go, his smile faltering. He felt like he had just tried to kick a puppy, and the puppy had looked back at him with the eyes of a wolf. Halden mocked her porcelain skin as weakness. He did not understand that under the scorching sun of the desert, protecting your skin is not vanity, it is survival discipline. An invisible armor against a hostile environment is mandatory for every warrior. Check the description for the protection strategy. Lennox entered the women's restroom and locked the door. She checked the stalls, empty. She moved to the mirror. The coffee stain was a disaster, but she ignored it. She reached into her pocket and pulled out a device that looked like a standard compact mirror. She flipped it open. It wasn't a mirror. It was a high-frequency RFID skimmer. When Halden had bumped into her, when he had leaned in to mock her, she hadn't just been standing there. She had brushed against his hip pocket. She pressed a button on the device. A progress bar filled up in green. Cloning ID, complete. Access level, Tier 1. Lennox permitted herself a small, cold smile. She didn't need his password anymore. She was him. She sat on the closed toilet lid and pulled out a tablet from her cargo pocket, syncing it with the cloned ID signal. She navigated through the base's secure network, bypassing firewalls that would have stopped this estate-sponsored hacker. She wasn't hacking the system thought she was Brooks Halden. She dug past the operational files, past the mission briefs, into the personal subdirectories hidden in the cache of his profile. She found a folder labeled Logistics Whoa. Innocuous, boring, exactly where a smart operator would hide the dirt. She opened it, spreadsheets, bank transfers, shell companies in the Caymans and Singapore. But it wasn't just numbers, it was a list. Agent K. Miller, compromised. Location, Beirut. Status, burned. Agent J. Doe, compromised. Location, Kiev. Status, missing. Lennox's breath hitched. This wasn't just embezzlement. Halden wasn't stealing fuel or selling night vision goggles. He was selling people. He was selling the locations of deep cover operatives. The Ghost Fund wasn't a retirement plan. It was a slaughterhouse ledger. "You monster," she whispered, her voice trembling with a rage she rarely allowed herself to feel. "You are selling them out." She recognized the names. Miller was a friend from training. Doe was a mentor. Halden was financing his ego with their blood. She quickly copied the files, encrypting them into a dummy image file, a picture of a cat, typical internet junk, and uploaded it to a dead drop server. Evidence secured. But it wasn't enough. She needed to catch him in the act. She needed to know why. And she needed to know who was buying. She cleaned herself up as best she could, the cold water doing little for the coffee stain, but cooling her burning anger. She exited the restroom, her face once again the mask of the vapid, clumsy clerk. Halden was waiting for her in the corridor. He was leaning against the wall, alone this time. The charm was gone. His face was hard, angular, and dangerous. "You took a long time in there," he said, pushing off the wall. "I was trying to save the uniform, sir," Lennox replied, keeping her eyes on his boots. "You were looking at something on my screen earlier," Halden said, stepping into her path, blocking her way. "In the war room, before you fix it. I was looking at the static, sir. Don't lie to me, Anastasia." He reached out, his hand moving towards her face. Lennox fought every instinct in her body that screamed to break his wrist, to drive her palm into his nose, to drop him where he stood. She forced herself to be still. His fingers brushed a lock of loose blonde hair near her ear. It was a gesture that straddled the line between flirtation and threat, intimate and violating. "Pretty things break easily around here," he whispered, twirling the hair around his finger. "Especially when they see things they shouldn't. You stick to the cables. Leave the thinking to the operators. Do you understand?" Lennox employed the breath. 4 counts in. "I could kill you in 3 moves. 4 counts hold. I need the network, not just you. 4 counts out. Patience is a weapon. 4 counts empty." "I understand, sir," she said, her voice trembling just the right amount. "I'm just the logistics girl." Halden smiled, satisfied with her fear. He let go of her hair and patted her cheek, a demeaning tap-tap. "Good girl. Now run along." He walked away, heading toward the secure briefing room. Lennox watched him go. She waited until he turned the corner. Then she reached into her pocket and tapped the record button on her phone. She had captured the threat. Another nail in his coffin. But Halden wasn't going to a briefing. He was going to his office. Inside his office, Brooks Halden locked the door and sat at his desk. He opened a drawer and pulled out an old, battered photograph. It showed a younger Halden, covered in dust and blood, standing in the mouth of a cave in Yemen. Next to him, barely visible in the shadows, was a figure in tactical gear, face obscured by a scarf and goggles. He ran his thumb over the photo. Yemen, the mission that made him a hero, the mission that broke him. "They don't understand," he muttered to the empty room. "They sit in their air-conditioned offices and send us to die, and when we come back broken, they give us a medal and a kick out the door." He believed his own lie. He wasn't a traitor in his own mind. He was the Dark Knight, the one willing to do the dirty work to secure a future for his brothers. The Navy had abandoned his team in that cave. The Ghost Fund was going to build a private military company, a sanctuary where operators would never be abandoned again. If he had to sell a few CIA spooks to get the seed money, that was the cost of doing business. It was collateral damage. He looked at the digital clock on his desk. 1,400 hours. The buyer was getting impatient. They wanted the Aegis missile defense codes. The crown jewel. If you're still here, drop a crown emoji in the comments to mark your place in the mission. Halden pulled a burner phone from a hidden compartment in the floor. He typed a text message. "Item available tonight. Price doubles. Meet at the marina." He hit send. Then a thought occurred to him. That girl. The clerk. She was too quiet, too observant. And she looked Russian. The features, the bone structure, paranoia, cold and slippery, coiled in his gut. What if she wasn't just a clerk? What if she was a plant? Not from naval intelligence, but from the buyers. Or worse, a competitor. He needed insurance. He opened his tactical locker and pulled out a micro-transmitter, a bug, the size of a grain of rice. He needed to plant it on her. If she was a spy, she would make a mistake. And if she wasn't, well, he'd have some entertainment listening to her cry to her mother about the mean SEAL commander. Lennox was back in the logistics office monitoring the network traffic. She saw the spike in encrypted data from Halden's office. He was communicating. The timeline was accelerating. Suddenly, her door opened. Halden stood there. He didn't look arrogant now. He looked manic. "I need a requisition form signed," he said, walking in without waiting for permission, "for the drill tonight." "Of course, sir." Lennox stood up. Halden moved past her desk, accidentally knocking her purse off the chair. Contents spilled onto the floor. Lipstick, a wallet, a paperback book. "Clumsy me," Halden said, crouching down to help. "Let me get that." Lennox watched him. She saw the sleight of hand. It was fast, professional. As he scooped up her lipstick, his other hand slipped the micro-transmitter into the lining of her bag. "Thank you, sir," she said, taking the bag from him. "Just being helpful," Halden grinned, but the smile didn't reach his eyes. "Be ready for tonight. We're running a full lockdown drill. I'll need tech support on standby." "I'll be here." Halden left. Lennox waited 3 seconds. Then she reached into her bag and pulled out the bug. She held it up to the light. Amateur, older model, short range. She didn't crush it. She didn't flush it. She set it gently on her desk. She knew he was listening. She knew he was terrified of her Russian look. She decided to feed the wolf exactly what it wanted. She leaned close to the bug, and in a soft, melodic voice, she began to hum. It was a tune her grandmother had taught her, a Russian lullaby, Bayou, Bayushki, Bayou. In his office, wearing headphones, Halden went pale. The blood drained from his face. "I knew it," he whispered. "She's one of them." Panic seized him. The lullaby wasn't just a song. In his paranoid mind, it was a signal, a warning. They were on to him. He couldn't wait. He had to move the Aegis data now, tonight, during the drill. He would download the files, kill the spy during the confusion of the lockdown, and vanish before the morning. He grabbed his sidearm and checked the magazine. "You want to play games, Anastasia?" he hissed. "Let's play." Lennox stopped humming. She looked at the time. 1,600 hours. The sun was dipping lower, casting long shadows across the base. The game had changed. He wasn't just stealing anymore. He was cornered, and a cornered animal bites. She needed to get into the war room before he initiated the lockdown. She needed to be the fly in his web. She stood up, smoothed her coffee-stained uniform, and tied her hair back tighter. The princess was gone. The hunter was awake. She walked out of her office, moving against the flow of personnel leaving for the day. The base speakers crackled to life. "Attention all hands. Exercise, exercise, exercise. Security alert. Condition Zulu. All non-essential personnel evacuate sensitive areas. This is a drill." The alarms began to blare. The blast doors to the secure sectors began to slide shut. Lennox broke into a run, sprinting toward the war room. She reached the heavy steel doors just as they were sealing. She slid through the gap, scraping her shoulder, and tumbled into the cool, dark interior of the tactical center. The room was empty. The screens were flashing red. Locked down. She stood up. The door behind her was sealed with a definitive magnetic thud. She was locked in. Then, from the shadows of the command platform, a slow clap echoed. Halden stepped into the light. He wasn't holding a clipboard. He was holding his Sig Sauer P6, and it was pointed directly at her chest. "You're fast for a clerk," Halden said, his voice echoing in the vast, empty room. But not fast enough. Lennox raised her hand slowly, palms open. "Sir, this is a drill. That weapon should be holstered. The drill is for them," Halden gestured vaguely at the sealed doors. "For us, this is a retirement party. Mine." He walked down the steps, keeping the gun leveled. "Drop the act. I heard the song. Who sent you? SVR? GRU? Or are you just a freelancer looking for a payday?" He thinks the lock on the door keeps him safe. He does not know Lennox has already ghosted his network. In the world of shadows, survival depends on absolute digital invisibility and encryption that no key can turn. The tools to vanish are in the description. Lennox didn't answer immediately. She studied him. He was sweating. His pupils were dilated. He was unstable. Dangerous, yes, but sloppy. "I don't know what you're talking about, Brooks," she said, using his first name for the first time. The intimacy of it made him flinch. "Don't call me that," he shouted. "You don't earn that." He advanced on her. "You saw the files. You know about the fund." "I know you're selling the Aegis codes," Lennox said, her voice dropping the clerk persona entirely. It became deeper, resonant with command. "I know you're meeting a buyer at the marina at 2100 hours, and I know you think you're a hero." Halden stopped. The gun wavered slightly, then steadied. "How do you know that?" "Because I watched you," she said. "I watched you betray the men you claim to save." "I am saving them," Halden screamed. "I am building a future for them. You think the brass cares? You think those admirals give a damn about us?" "I think," Lennox said, taking a step forward, "that you are a coward hiding behind a cause." Halden's face twisted in fury. He cocked the hammer of the pistol. Click. The sound was deafening in the silence. "I'm going to kill you," he said, his voice trembling with adrenaline. "And I'm going to put a throwdown piece in your hand. And I'm going to tell the Inquiry that the Russian spy panicked during the drill, and I'll be a hero again." Lennox looked at the gun. Then she looked at him. She didn't look like a victim. She looked like a judge. She slowly lowered her hands. "What are you doing?" Halden yelled. "Keep them up." "No," Lennox said. She stood tall, her spine straightening, the slouch of the tech support girl vanishing. In that moment, despite the coffee stain, despite the messy hair, she looked regal, imperial. "If you're going to shoot a superior officer, Brooks," she said, her voice cutting through the air like a blade, "you better look me in the eye when you do it." "Superior officer?" Halden laughed, a high, jagged sound. "You're a clerk. You're a nobody. You're Anastasia." "I am Russian," Lennox admitted, her tone shifting, becoming contemplative. "My grandmother was from St. Petersburg. She taught me that lullaby. She also taught me that when you face a wolf, you don't back down." "You're insane," Halden muttered. "Goodbye, sweetheart." His finger tightened on the trigger. The metal strained. Lennox didn't close her eyes. She looked past him, toward the security camera in the corner. She raised her right hand and tapped her chest 3 times. Thump, thump, thump. It wasn't a plea for mercy. It wasn't a nervous tick. He is about to make the biggest mistake of his life. "Turn on notifications so you don't miss the moment that the hunter becomes the prey." Halden hesitated. The gesture confused him. "What was that? A prayer?" "A timer," Lennox said. She looked at the digital clock on the wall. The seconds ticked over. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Clank. The sound came from the massive blast doors. The magnetic locks disengaged with a hydraulic hiss that sounded like a beast exhaling. Halden spun around, keeping the gun trained on Lennox, but looking at the door. "Who opened that? I have the override key. Nobody gets in." "You locked the manual door, Brooks," Lennox said calmly. "I control the building." The doors began to slide open, slowly, majestically. Halden laughed nervously. "It's the MPs. They're here for the drill." "Perfect. I'll tell them you pulled a gun." He turned back to Lennox, a confident sneer returning to his face. "Looks like your timer ran out, Princess. Here comes the cavalry." But as the doors opened fully, revealing the corridor beyond, the sneer vanished. It wasn't the military police. It wasn't base security in tactical gear. Standing in the corridor, bathed in the harsh white light of the hallway, were 6 men. They were not wearing tactical gear. They were wearing service dress blues, immaculate, pressed, gold buttons gleaming, and on their shoulders the stars. Admiral Kincaid, 4 stars, Commander of Naval Forces Pacific. Admiral Reeves, 3 stars, Naval Intelligence. Admiral Cross, 2 stars, Surface Warfare. And 3 Rear Admirals from Special Warfare Command. A wall of brass, a phalanx of authority. Halden's mouth fell open. He lowered the gun slightly, confusion warring with panic. "Admirals, sirs?" He tried to pivot, tried to salvage the situation. "Thank God you're here. I have a situation. I've detained a foreign agent. She armed herself during the drill." He pointed the gun back at Lennox. "She's dangerous. Stay back." The admirals did not look at him. They did not acknowledge his words. They did not acknowledge the gun. They stepped into the room, their footsteps moving in perfect unison, a rhythmic thud-thud-thud that echoed like a drumbeat. They walked right past Halden. Halden felt invisible. "Sirs, I'm talking to you. That woman is a spy." Admiral Kincaid stopped. He was 10 feet from Lennox. The other 5 admirals fanned out behind him, forming a perfect semicircle. They stood rigid, eyes locked forward. Lennox stood by the console. She didn't salute, she didn't speak. She just waited. The silence stretched. 5 seconds. 10 seconds. It was heavy, suffocating. The only sound was the hum of the servers and Halden's ragged breathing. "What is happening?" Halden whispered, his voice trembling. Then Kincaid's voice boomed, shattering the silence. "Protocol Neptune." Halden froze. He knew that phrase. It was a myth, a campfire story told among SEALs about the Shadow Command, the authority that existed above the law, above the rank structure, the Black Neptune unit. The 6 admirals moved as one. First, they slammed their right fists over their hearts. Thud, a sound of absolute loyalty. Second, they snapped their hands up to their brows. Snap, a salute of unquestioning respect. Third, they opened their palms outward, facing Lennox. Whoosh, a gesture of transparency, of total submission to her command. The sound of 6 heels locking together and 6 hands snapping against fabric rang out like a gunshot. They held the pose, rigid, unmoving, saluting the dirty, coffee-stained clerk standing by the server rack. Halden stared. His brain couldn't process the image. 6 flag officers saluting her? It was impossible. It was heresy, unless she wasn't a clerk. The realization hit him with the force of a physical blow. His knees buckled. The gun slipped from his sweating fingers and clattered onto the concrete floor. Clatter. The noise was deafening in the stillness. Lennox didn't look at the gun. She looked at the admirals. She let them hold the salute. She let the weight of it crush the air out of the room. Then, slowly, deliberately, she reached up. She pulled the hair tie from her messy bun. Her golden hair cascaded down her shoulders, framing her face. She brushed the dust from her sleeve. She looked at Kincaid. She nodded once. A microscopic dip of her chin. "At ease, gentlemen," she said. Her voice was soft, but it carried more power than a shouting general. The admirals dropped their hands in unison. Snap! Lennox turned her gaze to Halden. He was on his knees now, staring up at her with the wide, terrified eyes of a man who has just realized he has been mocking God. She walked towards him. The click of her boots was the only sound in the world. She stopped 2 feet from him. She looked down her high, aristocratic nose. "You wanted to build an army to save the abandoned, Brooks?" she asked, her voice cold. "You wanted to find the ghosts?" She leaned down, her blue eyes boring into his soul. "I am abandoned. I am the ghost." and I am the one who cleans up your mess. Thank you for listening. Like and subscribe to see justice served. Halden couldn't speak. He was shaking. Who are you? Lennox reached into her pocket. She didn't pull out a badge. She didn't pull out an ID. She reached down and rolled up her left sleeve. There, running from her wrist to her elbow, was a jagged, ugly scar. Burn tissue, shrapnel marks. Halden gasped. He knew that scar. He had seen it 5 years ago, on a useless intel officer in a cave in Yemen, an officer whose face was covered in bandages, an officer he thought he had saved. You remember Yemen, don't you, Brooks? Lennox whispered. You tell everyone you saved the intel officer. You dragged her out. You were the hero. Halden nodded dumbly. You didn't save me, Lennox said. I called the airstrike. I walked into the fire to mark the target. I dragged you into that cave when you took a round to the leg. I kept you alive for 14 hours while you cried for your mother. No, Halden whined. No, that's not. She was a nobody. I was the voice on the radio, Lennox hissed. I was the one who got the evac chopper to land in a sandstorm, and I let you take the credit because my mission was classified. I let you be the hero because I didn't need the medal. She stood up, towering over him. But heroes don't sell their brothers. Heroes don't betray the flag. She turned to the admirals. Secure him. 2 MBs materialized from the corridor, rushing past the admirals to grab Halden. They didn't treat him gently. They dragged him up, cuffing his hands behind his back. Wait! Halden screamed, struggling. I didn't know. She trapped me. It's entrapment. It's a purge, Lennox said simply. As they dragged him toward the door, Halden looked back, desperation in his eyes. Lennox, please, we served together. Lennox didn't flinch. She picked up her clerk ID badge from the desk. She looked at it for a moment. The face of the invisible girl, the coffee girl, Anastasia. She walked to the trash can and dropped it in. Service ends when treason begins, she said. The MPs hauled him out. His screams faded down the corridor. Victory has a cost. Watching a former brother fall leaves invisible scars on a commander's mind. To keep fighting, mental recovery and finding inner balance is as vital as physical training. Find the path to peace in the description. The room was quiet again. The 6 admirals remained standing. Orders, Admiral? Kincaid asked respectfully. Lennox looked around the war room. The screens were back to normal. The threat was neutralized. But the victory felt hollow. Halden was gone, but the network he had dealt with, the buyers, they were still out there. Her phone buzzed in her pocket. She pulled it out. A secure text message. No number. Just a black screen with white text. Project TSAR requires asset. Location, Moscow. Status immediate. Lennox stared at the screen. Project Tsar. The mission everyone said was suicide. The mission that needed someone who could disappear in plain sight. Someone with Russian blood. She looked up at Kincaid. A small, sad smile touched her lips. The princess is gone, Admiral, she said softly. She put the phone away and straightened her shoulders, the regal bearing returning, stronger than ever. Only the Admiral remains. She walked toward the door, her stride long and purposeful. The 6 admirals parted like the Red Sea, bowing their heads slightly as she passed. She walked out into the corridor, into the unknown. The coffee stain on her uniform was a badge of honor now, a reminder that she could walk through the mud and come out clean. She was Lennox Hale, and she was just getting started. The silence in the Coronado war room following Brooks Halden's screaming exit was heavy enough to fracture bone. It was not the silence of peace. It was the suffocating vacuum left after a violent implosion. The 6 admirals remained in their formation, a wall of brass and stars that had just decimated a man's life with a single synchronized gesture. But Lennox Hale, Rear Admiral Lennox Hale, director of Black Neptune, did not look at them. She looked at the empty doorway where her former teammate had been dragged away. Her chest heaved, a microscopic movement hidden beneath the coffee-stained uniform of a logistics clerk. The adrenaline that had sustained her through the confrontation, the 4-count breathing that had kept her lethal instincts on a leash, began to recede, leaving behind a cold, hollow ache in her gut. Betrayal was a poison that had no antidote. Admiral Kincaid broke the formation. The 4-star commander stepped forward, his polished shoes crunching softly on a piece of plastic, the shattered remains of the microtransmitter Halden had tried to plant on Lennox. Admiral Hale, Kincaid said, his voice dropping the parade ground boom for a tone of somber professional deference. The prisoner is secure. NCIS has him in isolation, but we have a problem. Lennox turned slowly. The Russian princess persona, the haughty, regal mask she had worn to terrify Halden, melted away, replaced by the razor-sharp focus of a strategic operator. "The buyer," she stated. It wasn't a question. "Precisely," Kincaid nodded, gesturing to the main tactical screen, which Lennox had restored moments ago. Halden was not just hoarding data. He was on a timeline. We intercepted a burst transmission from his device the moment he entered the room. A go signal. Lennox walked to the console, stepping over the discarded handgun Halden had dropped. She typed a command string, her fingers moving with the same blurring speed that had humiliated Halden earlier. The screen is populated with a digital map of San Diego. A single red pulsar blinked ominously near the coastline. "The marina," Lennox said, her eyes narrowing. "He set the meeting for 2100 hours. He was going to sell the Aegis codes tonight." "He's in cuffs," Admiral Reeves, the head of Naval Intelligence, stepped in. "The buy is blown. The handler will spook when Halden doesn't show." "No," Lennox said, her mind racing through the variables. "The handler doesn't know Halden is burned. Halden sent the confirmation before he walked in here. The buyer is waiting for a courier. They are waiting for the Aegis drive." She looked down at her uniform, stained with coffee, smelling of stale fear and cheap detergent. Then she looked at the digital clock. 1900 hours. 2 hours to the meeting. "If we don't show," Lennox said, her voice hardening, "the handler vanishes. They burn the network. The ghost fund disappears, and we lose the list of compromised agents. We lost everyone Halden sold out." "We can't send Halden," Kincaid said. "He's unstable. He'll have the operation to save his own skin." "We don't send Halden." Lennox reached up and pulled the remaining pins from her hair, letting the golden waves fall completely loose around her shoulders. She looked at her reflection in the dark glass of the monitor. The bruises under her eyes, the sharp cheekbones, the pale skin that Halden had mocked as Anastasia. "Halden told me he thought I was a Russian spy," she said softly. "He was paranoid, but he wasn't entirely wrong about the profile. The buyers are likely SVR or a proxy. They are expecting a traitor looking for a payday. They aren't expecting the ghost." Kincaid stiffened. "Lennox, you've been under deep cover for 6 months. You just took down a Tier 1 operator. You are compromised. You are exhausted." "I am the only one who knows the codes," Lennox countered, turning to face him. "I am the only one who can authenticate the data enough to get close to the handler. If we send a team, they'll spot the TAC gear a mile away. If we send a drone, they'll jam it." She reached into her pocket and pulled out the flash drive, the bait drive she had prepared days ago, loaded with a virulent tracking worm disguised as the Aegis missile defense protocols. "I go in," she said. "I play the courier. I tell them Halden got cold feet or got made. I deliver the drive. Once it plugs into their system, we own their entire network." "It's suicide," Admiral Cross muttered. "If they check your biometrics—" "I'll use Halden's," Lennox said coldly. "I cloned his ID in the restroom. I have his digital fingerprint." The room fell silent. The 6 admirals exchanged looks. They knew the protocol. Black Neptune operations were voluntary. They were terminal. And they were necessary. Kincaid sighed, a sound of resignation and immense respect. "You have 2 hours, Admiral. What do you need?" Lennox looked down at her ruined clothes. "I need a wardrobe change, and I need a boat." Lennox is about to walk into the lion's den, wearing nothing but a disguise and her wits. While she prepares to face a lethal enemy, ensure your own digital footprint is invisible to predators. In the world of cyber warfare, visibility is death. Secure your connection with the tool in the description. 1 hour and 45 minutes later, the San Diego Marina was a landscape of deep shadows and flickering sodium lights. The smell of salt water, diesel fuel, and dead fish hung heavy in the cool night air. The gentle clank-clank-clank of rigging hitting aluminum masts created a rhythmic, eerie soundtrack to the scene. A black sedan rolled silently into the parking lot, stopping in the darkest corner away from the security cameras. The rear door opened. The woman who stepped out bore no resemblance to the logistics clerk who had scrubbed floors in the war room. Lennox Hale had transformed. She wore a tailored black trench coat belted tightly at the waist, the collar turned up against the wind. Beneath it, a charcoal silk blouse and dark tactical trousers tucked into high-heeled boots that added 3 inches to her height and a lethal sharpness to her stride. Her hair was slicked back into a severe, tight ponytail, exposing the sharp, aristocratic lines of her face. Her lips were painted a deep blood red, not for vanity, but to draw the eye, to distract, to intimidate. She looked like money. She looked like danger. She looked exactly like the kind of high-end intermediary a corrupt SEAL would hire to fence billion-dollar secrets. In her ear, a microscopic comms unit crackled. "Overwatch is set," Kincaid's voice whispered. "Snipers on the north roof. CGIS boat holding at the breakwater. You are green to go. Pulse is steady at 62. "Copy," Lennox whispered, her lips barely moving. "Approaching slip 47. She began to walk down the main dock. The wood creaked softly under her boots. She carried a silver hard-shell briefcase in her left hand. Her right hand was empty, swinging naturally, but hovering inches from the concealed Glock 43 tucked into her waistband. The marina was mostly deserted. A few tourists laughed on a party boat 3 piers over, their drunken joy a stark contrast to the tension tightening in Lennox's chest. She counted the slips. 45, 46. Slip 47 was occupied by a 60-foot sport fisher named the Oligarch. It was dark. No running lights, no movement on deck. A classic ghost ship. Lennox stopped at the edge of the slip. She stood under the pool of light from a dock lamp, making herself visible. She checked her watch, 2100 hours exactly. "I'm here," she said, speaking to the empty air, knowing they were listening. For 10 seconds, nothing happened. Then, the cabin door of the yacht slid open with a hydraulic hiss. A man stepped out. He was huge, a wall of muscle in a cheap suit that strained at the shoulders. He had the dead eyes of a killer and the earpiece of a professional. He didn't speak. He just gestured for her to come aboard. Lennox didn't hesitate. She stepped onto the gunwale, her heels clicking on the fiberglass deck. She walked past the muscle, sensing the heat of a weapon under his jacket. She entered the main cabin. The interior of the yacht smelled of expensive leather and cheap cigars. Sitting at a mahogany table, illuminated by the glow of a laptop screen, was a man who looked nothing like a soldier. He was slight, balding, wearing wire-rimmed glasses and a cardigan. He looked like an accountant. Lennox knew better. This was the Actuary, a legendary broker for the SVR, a man who didn't deal in numbers, but in human lives. "You are not Brooks Halden," the Actuary said, his voice soft, accented with a precise Oxford English clip. He didn't look up from his laptop. "Brooks is detained," Lennox said, her voice dropping into a smoky, Russian-inflected register. "He had a disagreement with his command structure regarding a drill. He sent it to me." The Actuary looked up. His eyes, magnified by the thick lenses, were cold, calculating. "Halden does not have partners. He is a narcissist. He works alone." "He has partners when he needs an exit strategy," Lennox countered, placing the silver briefcase on the table. "He panicked. He wanted the money transferred to the Cayman account immediately. I am here to ensure the transaction clears before I hand over the drive." The muscle at the door shifted. The Actuary stared at Lennox. He was profiling her, looking for the lie, looking for the cop. "You have the look of the Rodina," he observed, tilting his head. "St. Petersburg?" "My grandmother," Lennox said, repeating the truth she had told Halden. It was the best kind of lie, the one wrapped in reality. "She taught me never to trust a man in a cheap suit." The Actuary smiled. It was a thin, reptile thing. "Open the case." Lennox clicked the latches. Snap, snap. She lifted the lid. Inside, cushioned in black foam, sat a single, encrypted hard drive. It looked innocuous. It contained a virus that would eat their network alive. "The Aegis protocols," Lennox said, "updated 12 hours ago. Radar cross-sections, targeting algorithms, and the backdoor keys for the Pacific Fleet." The Actuary reached out. Lennox slammed the case shut. "Bang! The transfer," she demanded. 900 million, confirmed." The Actuary chuckled. "You have fire. I like that. Halden was a bore, all whining about brotherhood and betrayal. You are a business." He typed on his laptop. He turned the screen around. A bank transfer window. Processing. "Insert the drive," the Actuary said. "I need to verify the hash totals. Once the data is confirmed, I press enter. You get your money, we get our weapons." Lennox hesitated. This was the choke point. If she plugged it in, they would know within seconds it was a trap if the virus didn't execute instantly. "Do it!" the muscle at the door grunted, stepping closer. Lennox pulled the drive from the case. She plugged it into the Actuary's laptop. The screen flickered. A progress bar appeared. Verifying. Lennox held her breath. 4 counts in, 4 counts hold. The bar hit 100%. The screen turned green. Data confirmed, the actuary whispered, his eyes widening with greed. Beautiful. He reached for the enter key to send the money. Suddenly the screen turned red. A skull and crossbones appeared, pixelated and crude. Then, text began to scroll rapidly. Uploading geolocation, downloading contact list, system lockout. The actuary froze. What is this? He hammered the keys. It's a worm! It's eating the database! He spun on Lennox, his face twisting into a snarl. Traitor! You are not a courier. I'm the ghost, Lennox said calmly. Kill her! The actuary screamed. The muscle at the door drew his weapon, a suppressed MP5. The trap is sprung, but the hunter is trapped in the cage with the beast. In moments of extreme danger, hesitation is the only wrong move. When the world slows down, training takes over. If you are still watching, drop a crown emoji to show you stand with the ghost. Lennox didn't reach for her gun. She dropped to the floor just as the actuary's bodyguard opened fire. Foot, foot, foot. Bullets shredded the mahogany table where she had been standing, sending splinters flying like shrapnel. Lennox rolled, grabbing the heavy silver briefcase. She swung it with all her strength, smashing it into the actuary's knees. He screamed, collapsing sideways, knocking the laptop and the precious evidence onto the floor. The bodyguard adjusted his aim. Lennox was prone, vulnerable. She had a split second. She kicked the table leg, toppling the heavy wood slab onto its side, creating a makeshift barricade. Bullets thumped into the wood, punching through but losing their velocity. Breach! 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 Kincaid's voice roared in her ear. Outside, the marina exploded with light. Floodlights from the CGIS boat blinded the windows. Federal agents! Drop your weapons! The bodyguard didn't drop his weapon. He turned toward the window to fire at the incoming threat. Lennox moved. She surged up from behind the table, her Glock 43 clearing her waistband in a blur of motion. She didn't yell freeze. She fired. Bang! Bang! Double tap. Center mass. The bodyguard crumpled against the bulkhead, sliding down, leaving a smear of red. The actuary was scrambling for a side door, clutching the laptop. He was trying to dump the drive into the ocean. Lennox vaulted the overturned table. She tackled him, driving her shoulder into his ribs. They hit the deck hard. The actuary clawed at her face, his fingernails digging into her cheek, ripping open the skin Halden had mocked as porcelain. Lennox didn't feel it. She grabbed his wrist, twisting it until the bones snapped. The laptop clattered to the deck. "It's over!" she yelled, pinning him down, her knee on his throat. The actuary spat at her. "You think this ends here? You think Halden was the only one? We have eyes everywhere. Project Tsar sees all." Lennox froze. Project Tsar. The name on the text message. "Who is the Tsar?" she demanded, pressing the barrel of her Glock into his temple. "Tell me." "You will meet him soon enough, Anastasia," the actuary wheezed, a bloody smile on his lips. "He has been waiting for you." The cabin door burst open. A tactical team in full-body armor swarmed the room. Laser sights swept the space. "Clear! Subject secure! Admiral, stand down!" Lennox breathed. 4 counts out. 4 counts empty. She slowly holstered her weapon. She stood up, her legs shaking slightly as the adrenaline dump hit her system. She looked at the actuary, pinned by 2 agents. She looked at the laptop, the red screen still flashing upload complete. She had won. The network was exposed. The agents Halden had sold out were safe, or at least their compromise was known. She walked out onto the deck of the yacht. The cool night air hit her face, stinging the fresh scratches on her cheek. The marina was swarming with flashing blue lights. Admiral Kincaid was waiting on the dock. He looked at her, blood on her face, clothes torn, hair wild. He didn't see a mess. He saw a warrior. "Status?" he asked. "Network neutralized," Lennox said, her voice raspy. "The virus is propagating. We have their bank accounts, their safe houses, their handler list. And Halden?" "Halden was just a pawn," Lennox said, looking out at the dark water. "The game is bigger than him." "Medical is standing by," Kincaid said gently. "You need to get that face looked at." Lennox touched her cheek. Her fingers came away bloody. "It's just a scratch, sir. It matches the one on my arm." "Lennox," Kincaid said, stepping closer, "you're done. Black Neptune 49A is closed. You can go home. You can disappear again." Lennox looked at the chaos of the crime scene. She thought about the quiet logistics office. She thought about the cables and the coffee and the invisibility. "I can't go back, sir," she said. "The actuary mentioned Project Tsar. He knew my cover name. He called me Anastasia." Kincaid's face darkened. "That's impossible. That file is eyes only for the Joint Chiefs." "He knew," Lennox insisted. "Which means we have a leak at the top. Or they've been watching me the whole time." The mission is over, but the war for the mind continues. The scars of tonight will fade, but the psychological toll of deep cover requires professional care. Commanders know that mental health is a strategic asset. Find the tools to rebuild your resilience in the description below. The aftermath of the operation was a blur of debriefings, reports, and medical checks. Brooks Halden was transferred to a black site facility in Virginia. He would never see the inside of a courtroom. His trial would be silent, his sentence eternal. The public would simply be told he died in a training accident. A hero to the end, for the sake of morale. Only the ghosts would know the truth. 3 days later, Lennox Hale stood in her quarters at the base. The room was sparse. A bed, a desk, a packed duffel bag. She was leaving Coronado. The logistics clerk position had been terminated. She wore her dress whites, the uniform of a rear admiral. The stars on her shoulders gleamed in the morning sun. She looked in the mirror. The bruising on her jaw from Halden's punch had faded to a sickly yellow. The scratches on her cheek were healing scabs. The freckles remained, dusting her nose like constellations. She picked up her phone. The text message from the unknown number was still there. Project Tsar requires asset. Location, Moscow. She hadn't replied. A knock came at the door. "Enter," she said, her voice commanding. The door opened. It was Chief Petty Officer Waller, the veteran operator who had suspected her from the beginning. He was holding a small box. He stopped when he saw her uniform. His eyes went wide. He snapped to attention so fast his heels clicked. "Ma'am," he barked, I didn't know. I suspected, but..." "Admiral?" Lennox smiled. It was a genuine smile, rare and soft. "At ease, Chief." Waller relaxed, but only slightly. He looked at her with a mixture of awe and confusion. "The base is buzzing, ma'am. They say Halden was a traitor. They say a ghost took him down. They say the logistics clerk was... well, they don't know what to say." "Let them talk," Lennox said. "Rumors are a good cover." "I came to bring you this." Waller stepped forward, handing her the box. "We found it in Halden's locker, after the MPs cleared it out. I thought you should have it." Lennox opened the box. Inside, resting on velvet, was a silver coin. It was scorched, battered, and bent. It was her challenge coin, the one she had given Halden in the hospital in Germany 5 years ago, after Yemen. "To the brother who carried me," the inscription read. Lennox stared at it. A lie. He hadn't carried her, but she had led him believe it. She had given him this coin to build his confidence, to help him heal from the trauma of the cave. She had built the pedestal he stood on, and he had used that height to sell out their friends. "He kept it," Waller said quietly. "For what it's worth, he kept it." Lennox closed the box. "He kept it as a trophy, Chief, not a memento." She walked to the window, looking out at the training grounds where young SEAL candidates were suffering in the surf, believing in the brotherhood, believing in the code. "Chief," she said without turning, "you have a good team. Watch them. Don't let them get lost in the legend." "Yes, ma'am," Waller said. "Where will you go?" Lennox turned. She picked up her sunglasses. "Where the ghosts go, Chief. Into the cold." She walked past him, pausing at the door. "And Waller?" "Ma'am?" "The coffee in the mess hall is terrible. Fix it." Waller grinned. "Yes, Admiral." Lennox walked out of the barracks. A black SUV was waiting at the curb. Admiral Kincaid stood by the open door. "Ready?" he asked. Lennox looked back at the beast one last time. She saw the war room bunker in the distance. She saw the marina shimmering in the heat. She saw the ghost of the girl she had pretended to be. "Ready," she said. She slid into the car. Kincaid got in beside her. The door closed, sealing them in silence. "We have a flight waiting at North Island," Kincaid said as the car pulled away. "Direct to D.C., then a transport to Germany, then Moscow," Lennox finished. "You don't have to do this," Kincaid said. "We can send another operative, someone fresh." "The actuary knew my name," Lennox said, her eyes fixed on the horizon. "Project Tsar isn't just a mission, it's a personal invitation. If I don't go, they'll come for me. They'll come for anyone I care about. It's a trap, Lennox. I know, Lennox said. She touched the pocket where the battered coin lay. But I'm not the prey anymore, Admiral. I'm the bait. And when they bite... Her eyes shifted. The blue ocean ice turned dark, dangerous. The princess was gone. The Admiral was gone. Something else was there now. Something ancient and terrifying. I'll pull their teeth out. The car sped up, merging onto the highway, heading north. The sun began to set, painting the California sky in bruised purples and bloody reds. Lennox Hale closed her eyes. She began to breathe. 4 counts in, 4 counts hold, 4 counts out, 4 counts empty. The rhythm of the hunt. She was Lennox Hale. She was the ghost of Yemen. She was the nightmare of traitors, and the silence was just beginning. He mocked her silence. He treated her rank as a joke. He forgot that the most dangerous things in the ocean don't make a sound before they strike. Thank you for watching this story of justice and retribution. If you enjoyed seeing the arrogant humbled and the silent honored, please like and subscribe. It helps us tell more stories of the unsung heroes. Until next time, stay silent, stay dangerous. The screen does not fade to black. Instead, static cuts across the frame, jagged and harsh, resolving into the grain of a satellite feed. The timestamp in the corner reads, 48 hours later. The location tag types out, letter by chilling letter, Moscow, Russian Federation. Snow fell in heavy, silent sheets over Red Square, muting the city's heartbeat under a blanket of white. The air was cold enough to freeze breath in the throat, a sharp contrast to the humid heat of Coronado. A black Mercedes Maybach idled at the curb outside the Hotel Metropole, its exhaust plumes rising like gray ghosts into the night. The rear door opened. A woman stepped out. If Brooks Halden had seen her now, he would not have recognized the logistics clerk. He wouldn't have even recognized the Admiral. Lennox Hale had vanished. In her place stood Anastasia. She wore a floor-length gown of blood-red velvet, cut dangerously low, hidden beneath a coat of white sable fur that cost more than most officers earned in a decade. Her hair was no longer loose. It was braided into an intricate crown, woven with pearls that gleamed like teeth. She didn't walk, she prowled. The snow crunched submissively beneath her stilettos as she ascended the hotel steps. The doorman, a former Spetsnaz operator with a scar running through his eyebrow, stiffened. He didn't check her ID, he checked her eyes. And in them, he saw something that made him open the heavy brass doors without a word. Inside, the metropole hummed with the quiet, dangerous energy of oligarchs and spies. Lennox moved through the lobby, the chandeliers casting fractured light across her pale skin. She didn't look at the security cameras, though she knew exactly where each blind spot lay. She headed straight for the bar, the Chaliapin, where the deals that shifted borders were made over crystal glasses. She sat at the far end, away from the light. The bartender, a man with no name tag and too many knuckles, slid a glass of vodka across the mahogany without asking. "Neat," he murmured in Russian. As requested by the gentleman in the corner, Lennox didn't turn. She stared at the reflection in the mirror behind the bar. In the glass, she saw a man sitting in the shadows of a private booth. He was older, silver-haired, watching her with the patience of a spider. He raised a glass in a silent toast. It was not the actuary. It was not a handler. It was General Volkov, the architect of the Yemen ambush, the man Halden had unknowingly been working for. The Tsar. Lennox lifted her glass. Her hand was steady. She took a sip, the vodka burning a path down her throat, waking up the dragon she had kept sedated in California. She reached into her clutch, bypassing the compact pistol, and pulled out the silver challenge coin Waller had returned to her. She spun it on the bar top. Whirr! The sound cut through the murmurs of the room. The spinning silver blurred, a mesmerizing dance of light. Volkov stood up. He walked toward her, his cane tapping a rhythmic code on the floor. Tap, tap, tap. He stopped beside her. He didn't look at her. He looked at the spinning coin. "You are a long way from home, ghost," Volkov whispered, his voice like grinding stones. "Halden was a useful idiot, but you are a worthy opponent." "I'm not an opponent, General," Lennox said, slamming her hand down on the coin, stopping it dead. "I'm a consequence." She slid the coin toward him. He lifted his hand. Underneath, the coin had changed. It was no longer the silver seal trident. It was a black disc, embossed with a single white skull. The calling card of a kill team. Volkov smiled, but his eyes were dead. Then let the game begin, Anastasia. The game is over. Lennox stood, the red velvet of her dress looking like a spilled wound in the dim light. She leaned in close, her lips brushing his ear. I didn't come to play. I came to collect. She turned and walked away, leaving the coin, the vodka, and the general behind. As she pushed through the doors back into the snowy night, she didn't shiver. The cold was her element. The darkness was her ally. She tapped her earpiece once. Target confirmed, she whispered into the wind. Project Tsar is active. Burn it down. Behind her, the lights of the Hotel Metropole flickered once, then died. The hunt was on.